Welcome back to the channel. I think I'm developing a bit of a problem. You see, I bought probably a half a dozen or so games to play for the channel and record some videos of. Not really intending on doing a full feature-length series on Palworld, but I just can't quite make myself stop playing it. Back when it launched, it dug its hooks in, but at this point, it's actually developing into a bit of an addiction. I haven't really touched virtually anything else that I've downloaded off of Steam, so got a whole bunch of things in queue, and almost nothing really going. Alright, so the bees kill themselves. That should make them a bit of a challenge to farm up. Because I need them for honey, I think. Not sure if I have one yet or not. Anyway, we're exploring a new area, taking a look around, seeing what all we can find, what sort of peaceful things we can go and enjoy and bring to slaughter. Now, realistically, this is a point where it's starting to occur to me that I probably need to actually start doing some gear upgrades. But we saw a meteor fall, so let's go check out what that's about. Can't be that bad. Right. Yeah, I'm also starving to death. Well, not yet, but getting close to it. Anyway, back to the whole addiction that I've developed. I have a slew of different games that I'm intending on playing. Like I have Nexamon Extinction, Koromon, Monster Sanctuary, went on a monster catcher kick, Patch Quest, which is a good roguelite, Mighty Gun Volt Burst, 30XX. I'd like to do some Minecraft videos because I've actually got it available. Let's pause that conversation for a second and take a look at the aliens, apparently, that have fallen in a meteor. Well, we're doing pretty good damage to it with the Koromon, but my balls aren't exactly doing all that much. Oh, shit.
Fatality.
Well. So damage was good. My ability to absorb damage was not. Alright, time to upgrade. I don't think I can emphasize enough how much of a difference flying mount makes for this game. It's a shame that it's actually locked behind being at a certain level, so if you're not willing to go in and modify the rate that you gain experience, you don't get to actually have the most enjoyable form of transport in the game. Like, moving around on the ground's not that bad, but, I don't know, years and years of playing WoW, pre-flying and post-flying, well, pre-flying through Classic. I didn't actually start out when flying was not in the game at all, but just to be clear, I don't want to be putting false claims about my gamer cred out there, but it did teach me that ground travel is overrated if you are actually on a limited schedule. They spent a ton of time actually designing the game, designing this world. I'm not 100% certain why they would want to force you to get to see it from the least observable perspective. Like, don't get me wrong, when you're on foot, you can actually feel the size. Everything is vastly open. And kudos to them for one aspect that gets overlooked quite a bit. There's pretty much something everywhere. Like you notice there's rock nodes right there, there's trees, they can all be harvested. You'll find pals pretty much consistently no matter where you're going to, even with just the baseline spawn rates. The game is packed full of things. They did a very good job keeping it feeling active. Really need to start telling him not to attack things. Anyway, they did a very good job actually making the game feel filled. It's not empty. Every space is actually utilized. It's a very well-designed overworld. There's a bunch of games that they call it open world, but a bunch of the open world is actually really empty. This was especially true back in the early days of open world games. Like, let's be honest. There's a lot of people around my age, which is late 30s and younger to a certain point and older to a certain point that have some strong nostalgia for something like Skyrim. And that's largely because of the point in our lives where it came out. And it's not a terrible game. I'm pretty sure they added her in this patch. Like, she's part of the Terraria patch. And this guy here is just a black market seller, I think. Can't remember exactly, but yeah, she gives us a quest where if we bring her a what's his name? Grisbold, yeah. I think she'll actually accompany us doing certain things. I'm not 100% certain. I know I've always had trouble finding Grisbold, so maybe this time around I'll just breed him. And back here's a lift monk effigy. Really, I probably should sit down at some point and just grind as many of them out as humanly possible and just open up a bunch of fast travel points on the map. It wouldn't be a terrible idea. But anyway, back to the open world design. Skyrim, it's cool, really big space, but a lot of it really wasn't utilized other than just being there and looking nice. There just wasn't much to it. The towns and whatnot were very much alive, at least for that time, but you weren't encountering a bunch of stuff. To be honest with you, I felt like Tears of the Kingdom, or not Tears of the Kingdom, sorry. Breath of the Wild kind of suffered from this a little bit. I didn't feel like it was actually as full as it could be, at least of interesting things. Yeah, there were chests decently scattered around, but there was a lot of either underutilized or under-threatening space, just things that weren't all that interesting. I know people love it, and people are probably going to bash me for that, but I don't know. I just not a super big fan of Breath of the Wild, but to be honest with you, that could just be my age. The Zelda games that I grew up with were the 2D isometric ones, and the first couple 3D ones, and I really enjoyed those, and I still, to this day, my favorite Zelda games have been the handheld ones. Because they're the closest to the ones that I had when I was actually a little kid. I liked Ocarina of Time. I liked Majora's Mask, and a couple of the ones that come after that. But my favorite was A Link to the Past. That's what I started with. I'm not a big fan of the direction it's been going with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It doesn't really feel like a Zelda game to me. Tears of the Kingdom went a lot more back in the correct direction to me. Like, it has much better dungeon variety. But at the end of the day, they're still not that interesting dungeons. The bosses, at least, are interesting. That was one of the big things that really disappointed me with Breath of the Wild. I could have cared less about the open world. The bosses were boring, and that, to me, was sort of the death knell. Controversial opinion, but I actually think it's worse than Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword was actually a good game that was incredibly marred by terrible controls. And even the port on the Switch, it still doesn't really feel great to play it because of the way it was designed versus how it feels when you port it over. It's better, but it wasn't a bad game. It was just a game that didn't play well. And it's pretty good proof that you can have a good game, a good shell of a game, and if the delivery of it is bad, it's still going to be a bad game. But anyway, what are some good open world games out there so that we can actually talk positively about a few things? Well, this one. Open world, not normally my favorite thing to play around with, but I guess I could give Zelda at least one piece of credit. While I didn't really like the open world aspect of it, I don't like the weapon system in it, blah, blah, blah. I do like the fact that they still let you just go and do the dungeons as you wish. That was pretty cool. So I got to give credit where credit's due. It's not a terrible game to play. Like, I'm not, when I say it's my least favorite Zelda, I'm meaning that it's like a 7 out of 10. As far as I'm concerned, most of the Zelda games sit at 9 out of 10. It's one of my favorite series. It has the most hardcore nostalgia for me, but don't like the change in direction. Kind of like how I don't really like the change in direction for the Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, as well as 16 and 15. I don't think they're bad games. Oh, let's pause for a second. Do us a boss fight against Pin King. So, pause commentary on stuff outside of the game. Good place to farm ice organs if you need them early on. You can come in, kill the little dudes, leave, the little guys will respawn, and you can get some easy ice organs that way. Problem is, once you get strong enough, it's relatively easy to kill Pin King, so it stops becoming the best place to farm them because you really have to just take off anything that lets you have a passive pal out. Now, here I am thinking he's getting ready to just whip my ass again. Like, thinking this is going to be another fatality moment for you. But start taking advantage of the terrain. Yeah, no. Palworld is not Pokemon with guns. It's more like you're playing a hunter out of World of Warcraft, but you have a lot more intricate pets. Because anyone who's played WoW will tell you that pets in it are pretty much, you have a couple categories, and everything fits into one of those categories, which is the only way they can really properly balance it, let's be honest. But this would be World of Warcraft's Hunter if you had a whole bunch of your abilities that were in the form of your pals, rather than actually on the character directly, and all your character did was auto-shot. So, I don't know. I'm just thoroughly enjoying it, thoroughly addicted. And he wasn't a bad boss. He's not a hard one. He's good capture, though. He can be quite useful early on. At least I think he can. He was for me. Look, you shouldn't come to me for advice in this, or pretty much any other game except for maybe Monster Hunter. I'm generally looking at advice other people told me. That's the reason why we're kind of doing a Let's Play with this that's edited down to make it just a little bit more tolerable to watch. Because, I don't know, I'm not terribly enthusiastic about forging my own way through everything by absolutely any measure. Kind of doing that with Koromon, or at least I was on the mobile. I'm trying to focus on forcing myself back into playing it on PC so that I can record it. But I don't normally do that a lot. I'm going to try to do it a little bit more on the channel. Also starting to book stuff back in. I've got that recorded, but that takes significantly more time to edit together than this does. The hardest part about editing a video for the video game is actually trimming it down, and then going through and throwing some commentary over top's not that hard. If you can't tell, this is largely stream of consciousness. Alright, so what's some more trash I can talk about Nintendo games that'll actually help ensure that all the Nintendo fans out there don't ever actually watch my videos? Look, I know if you've watched a couple of these, I've probably talked a bunch of trash about Nintendo. And I do feel like the lawsuit they're using against Palworld is scummy, and it's really just meant to test the waters and see if they can successfully shut this game down, then they can shut down a whole bunch of other competing... if they can shut this game down, then they can shut down a whole bunch of other competing games. And I hope they lose in a significant manner. Because they're already the reason why pause screens are kind of funky. If you didn't know, they have a patent involving pause screens. You can look that up on your own if you want to. So Nintendo as a company, not a big fan of. They're pretty much your traditionally villainous corporation. Nintendo as a game producer, 90% good, 10% bad. So, what do I mean by that? They have some of my absolute favorite games. And their first-party games like Zelda, Metroid, Mario, Star Fox, those games you could pretty well expect to be a home run. Like, I have yet to play a Mario game that I dislike. I thought Sunshine was going to be trash back when I saw it advertised. Like, I was like, Mario on a vacation with a water pack? What in the world is Nintendo thinking? It was actually incredibly fun. I don't know that it has the same replayability that other Mario games have had, but Mario Sunshine was actually a really, really fun game. I don't think they make bad games. Even though I was ragging on Zelda just now, I was ragging on Zelda because they've made so many Zelda games that I absolutely love and was thrilled to play. If I hadn't enjoyed so many of them, I wouldn't be disappointed in the way that they've taken it. And yet again, I'm disappointed with a 7 out of 10 game. That's a pretty high record. Now, as far as Pokemon goes, I don't necessarily lump that purely under Nintendo alone, because that is the Pokemon company. That's them working with Niantic and someone else. I can't remember exactly what companies are involved in there that make that conglomerate. People tend to say, or just say Nintendo. It's not just Nintendo. So I don't really put too much blame on them on the consistently lacking updates for Pokemon. I'm sure they have something to do with it, but I would imagine it's more the fact that that's a conglomerate company. And when you get 3 relatively large companies working together to try to make something, and a lot of the times you end out with a lot of stagnation, which is exactly what the problem is with Pokemon. And they've learned that people will buy it and buy millions of copies no matter what they do with it. Like, I will probably buy any Pokemon that they come out with. To be fair, kind of put a pause on buying Nintendo games at the moment until we can see some progress on a couple of the criticisms with the Switch 2 and the way they've handled that whole situation. Like, I've not picked up a Switch 2, and I probably won't pick one up for a while. But, all things being equal, that aside, the games are good. If Nintendo didn't have such weird copyright policies for YouTube videos, I would find a way to get some good videos off my Switch. Actually, think I have Hades on the Switch. I have it on more than one system. That's an excellent game. I wouldn't mind doing a playthrough of it on here, but if it's on the Switch, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to touch Nintendo stuff on the Switch. I know their claims are probably just their first-party titles, but I'm still a super small channel. I'm not going to take anything that even sneezes of a risk. So maybe 2-3 years down the line, once I've actually built the channel up to be something decent and figured out what I'm doing to make things that are more than just mediocre to low tier videos, then we'll start throwing some of that stuff in. I actually feel like taking just a little bit of a risk and a lure and a little bit of a push. But for now, nah, just not worth it. So, looking through, trying to figure out what sort of armor I can get to upgrade to keep me from dying immediately. First thing I notice, don't really have a helm on. This sort of starts a cycle that I'm still stuck in. And that is upgrade my gear, upgrade base. Upgrade gear, upgrade base. I haven't really went out and hunt Coromon in a while in the present day. See, I recorded all this footage and I'm kind of going back and commentating on it. I pause a few times here and there. I just speak like it's fresh as I'm doing it just to tell you what I was thinking when I saw that, but realistically I'm giving you my impressions from the future. I'm not sure what it is with this game, but even just wandering around and doing nothing of any real value towards progressing the core of the game, I still feel like I'm enjoying myself. Like, if you pay attention to the upper right-hand corner, you'll notice Make a Fox Sparks harness will stay there for an inordinately long time. By the way, in the modern era, I've changed the incubation time on eggs. Why? Because I don't feel like waiting for a very long time for the large eggs to hatch. But for now, still let them sit there. And that's how I got my bee guard. When it catch one, I hatched one, so it's not going to blow up the base by default. If you catch them, you have to go in and disable the ability for them to commit suicide. Anyway, we start digging into trying to figure out how to properly get this base up and running. And for a little while, the base management side of it starts to get kind of overwhelming. Not yet. Like right now, it's not that many Pokemon. Oh, oops, sorry, I said the wrong word. It's not that many pals, but it does eventually get to a point where there's enough out there that making sure everything is flowing properly takes a bit of tweaking. Like making sure that they're actually eating enough and have enough access to things like hot tubs and whatnot, and decent beds to keep them from losing their sanity becomes a little bit of a challenge, at least for some of them. realistically, it's because some of the passive traits I have on a few of them make keeping them around really probably not worthwhile, and I should work on replacing the ones that I actually have as workers. But we'll go over that in a future video when we actually start breeding. For now, I'm just going to fly around, look around a little bit, do some fights, and try to get some materials together to actually make my character just a bit more resilient. So, okay, back to Nintendo. Yeah, I probably should organize my talking points beforehand and actually just keep them going, but we're moving into a bit of a time waster here. I'm trying, I think at this point, hold on, just so you know, before we start going back into Nintendo and the critique of them as a company, I had decided to try to fly out to the Terraria island to see what it's like. I misunderstood where it was. So, we're wasting a little bit of time flying out to a tropical island, which is and is not a waste. There's some interesting things you can do there, but it's not what we were wanting to do. Alright. Back to commenting on Nintendo. So, I mentioned they make great games. They put out consistently decent quality games. In other words, they run when they're released. And in the modern era, that's a pretty big deal. I love Monster Hunter. It's the video that you'll see most of on this channel so far. One of the reasons why it has kind of cooled off right now is because Wilds is just... it's a great game that the content cadence is okay, but there's nothing that really feels compelling to me to grind. Like, once I kill a creature, I felt like I'm good enough to move on. Legia, Cruz, and Seragios are the newest ones that are released. I don't really feel like I absolutely need to make their armor. I'm sure it would be fun, but I don't feel like I need to. I don't really feel like I need to make their weapons. Even though layered weapons are a thing right now, I got all the ones that I wanted beforehand, so as soon as it opened up, I was able to layer in the one that I wanted for the appearance of. And other than that, I just don't feel compelled to play much right now. It's not a bad game. It's actually a very, very good game. But there's one big problem. It was very, very poorly optimized for PC. And it really wasn't super great on PlayStation. It was significantly better than the average PC experience. But it wasn't the best it could be on PlayStation either. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like console was perfect. But it was fine. But they really botched the PC launch. And you don't really run into issues like that with Nintendo because they don't really release their stuff on other platforms. So when their games come out, they tend to be pretty highly optimized. There's been a few incidences in the past of having a couple issues, but they usually get rectified very, very quickly. Nintendo does take care of their games on their consoles. They make sure they run really well. Now, this leads me to my one issue with Nintendo in terms of how they do their games. And that's that they intend for you to play their games the way they want you to play their games. So what do I mean by that? I don't tend to participate in speedrunning. If I found a game that I thought would be fun to do it with, I might try it. Like, there's a couple incrementals that I've made videos for on the channel that don't take forever to finish. I might consider doing a speedrun in one of those because I feel like the path to do that would be very, very specific. But Nintendo, when they see things like speedruns and whatnot, if someone's using a glitch, they have been known to patch those glitches out. Even if it's something that the average player will never run into. There's a couple companies, I cannot remember specifically the one that I saw this quote from, but most companies that have an active speedrunning community tend to sort of take the philosophy of, if it's not something that they would expect the average customer to run into by accident, they don't patch it out. In other words, if it's something you have to go out of your way to trigger, they just leave it. Nintendo doesn't just want you to play the game, they want you to play the game the way they intend for you to play the game. There may be options, but they want the only options you have to be the ones that they set out for you. That's really obnoxious. I like Nintendo. I like their games. Yet again, as a company, I don't agree with a lot of their choices. And if you really get to look into speedrunning, you'll see a bunch of people like that. Like, some speedrunners are some of the most obsessive Nintendo fans in the world, but they'll point out that Nintendo has its flaws as a company. So there's no point in defending Nintendo and trying to pretend like they're a perfect company. They may make the games that kind of define your childhood. A lot of the games that Nintendo churns out are some of the best games to introduce small children into gaming. A lot of the games that they've made are some of the first games that I plan on letting my daughter play when she's old enough, or letting my son play when he's old enough, because they make good family-friendly games, and they make accessible games. Like, their games really are aimed at kids in terms of controls, but they have enough depth that you can still appreciate them as an adult, or just lay back and enjoy them for what they are. Like, Mario doesn't have any depth. Not really, in terms of story and stuff, but it's fun. But Nintendo is a very controlling company. And with the Palworld situation, I think they've bitten off a bit more than they can chew. Because I don't think they actually believe that Palworld has infringed on their patents. I think what they're seeing is the criticisms for Pokemon are popping up, and they have to find a way to stamp out the competition, or they're going to end out actually starting to see Pokemon drop off from being the #1 spot. And I'm not saying Palworld's going to be the one to do it, necessarily. There's other games that I think are much better direct Pokemon competitors than Palworld. For example, Coromon. I know I've mentioned it a couple points by now, but it's a very good direct competitor with Pokemon in terms of the type of game it is. The systems are different enough that I don't think they have to worry about necessarily being considered a clone, at least within American courts. I don't know how Japanese courts would handle it. But there are actually enough games out there now that Nintendo does have to be concerned with things like not being able to get away with the low-effort Pokemon games they've been putting out. And there's some interesting things popping up with the next Legends game that's coming out. And that would be that there's a few aspects of it, like with the combat, being able to reposition your Pokemon by pulling it out or dropping it back off from the Pokeball, that look very reminiscent of the way combat works, and say something just like Palworld. So I think there's a lot of layers to this lawsuit that go way beyond just them genuinely thinking that their IP has been infringed upon, or not their IP, but their patent has been infringed upon. I think this is a way to test the market and see if they can actually exert a little bit of control and try to get rid of some competition in a much more shady way than what most people would find acceptable. And yeah, I'm sorry to my OCD fans, which, two of you, that is uneven. I recognize that. That's not going to get fixed anytime soon. And you'll see why in another episode or two. Things aren't that complicated yet. They're going to get there. The base is going to start growing very, very rapidly right now. Look, first off, I'm going to pop some beds in. And so we're just going to cut through the process of putting them up. But I thought it'd be fun just to show how long exactly it took me to think about using the multi-placement button to drop a bunch of them down and then just make them. Now, fun fact, I have a Pin King captured. It wouldn't be that hard at this point to go capture a Bushi, and from there, I could actually make the breeding pen and pop an incubator down, because I'm pretty sure I have both of those unlocked and available, and make an Anubis. Now, why am I pointing that out here, you may be asking? Well, In a couple videos, when I actually have an Anubis, you'll see that they are capable of putting those things together in almost seconds. Don't skimp on them. If you decide to give this game a shot, that is the one breeding thing. As soon as you open up the ability to breed and make eggs, make an Anubis. Make 2. Drop them off in your base. Carry 1 around with you. It will make your life significantly easier. Now, this is where we actually start upgrading the house. I figured I'd first off would start out with just the windows. This converts very quickly. Now, what was my motivation in switching from wood to stone? Alright. You see the little firefox that I have running around, or Foxy Fire, I can't remember what his name is. It is possible for it to catch your base on fire if your base is made of wood. Or at least it was at one point. I have no idea if it still is. To be honest with you, a lot of the information I come across whenever I'm trying to do a little bit of research and figure out what some good things to do with the game would be, a lot of it seems very outdated. But that gave me the motivation to go ahead and start switching everything to stone. And then when I noticed that I actually have a decent amount of stone available, like not necessarily at this exact moment, but you'll see when I start getting into it, stone is really, really easy to come across. I was like, okay, this is not going to be that bad, and that actually looks pretty nice. So, this is what actually started the virus. I had a very clear intention with the game up until this point. There's something about remodeling this house that really sunk its claws in on me. And now the addiction has started. And that's how I already have several hours of footage left to edit. Alright, we're going to cut this one off and let everyone go. Have a good night, and remember, if I can beat it, so can you.